Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to another Bloodhound workshop. And let's see here. Let me finish taking a look at the names and just double check. And yep, I do recognize all the names in the room. So I will forego asking about doing the workshop introduction. Okay. Well, today we have two emailed in questions. And, just a little side note, just be mindful that we do use a ticketing system, right, for support. And ticketing systems don't, they don't show up immediately like an email can in an email box, all right? So ticketing systems do take time to process emails and whatnot. And so it's kind of the reason why I'm a little late this morning is the last email came in just as I was kind of getting set up. So I was trying to take some time to understand the question as best as possible before starting the workshop here. So just again, just to be mindful that if you send an email in after you receive the workshop, the Zoom email, that it may not show up in time. It may not make its way through the ticketing system, in time for the workshop there. So that has actually happened many times in the past. So, all right. So just so you guys are aware of that. So let's see here. Let me minimize that and let me pull up the first question. There we go. So this is a question about a Renko chart and a secondary time frame here. All right. So let me get my chart switched over. All right, so this will be the Renko chart. And let's pull this other one up here. And I'll set this one to the 30-second chart. There. And all right, well, that was pretty darn quick. All right, so the question is how to identify, and now this will be used as I'm assuming this will be used as a signal filter here, right? Where occasionally people who build systems on or are trading on a Renko chart, they want to use a secondary time frame to kind of confirm the signal on the Renko chart there. So essentially, the question is identifying when the bars from both time frames close in the same direction there. So, and the key component here is that we're working with on price change, right? So identifying, trying to synchronize two different time frames when it comes to Renko charts, that's a whole nother difficult business there when you're using on bar close as opposed to on price change, right? So there is a couple of videos out there that discuss the issue in trying to synchronize Renko charts with other time frames there when you're building a multi-time frame system there. So if anybody would like to know what those videos are, just let me know, and after I answer this question, I'll look up those videos there for you so you can understand a little bit about the issues in doing so with NinjaTrader. So right, so basically synchronizing two different time frames is a function of NinjaTrader. It's not up to Bloodhound, it's up to NinjaTrader. So but let's see here. So all right, we have the two charts, so let's get to work here with Bloodhound. All right, and first things first, let's save a file name. There we go. And all right, now that we have today's date in, all right, now we can get to work here. There we go, stretch that open. So first thing I need to do is add a secondary chart to Bloodhound. All right, so we'll add this 30-second chart here. So let's, all right, so anyways, all right there's the add chart button there. So, all right, and of course the default's going to be a 1-minute chart. So let's switch this over to a second chart. There we go, second, and there we go, 30 seconds is the default, and there we have it. Now, next thing we need to do is when you add a time frame to an indicator, and remember, Bloodhound is at the end of the day just an indicator. When you add a time frame to anything, you do have to reload the chart. So there we go. Now we'll get NinjaTrader to spin up that 30-second chart on the Renko chart. All right, now let's open Bloodhound again. And so I'm going to add a couple of bar direction solvers here. Right, so we'll add one. So you'll notice now I have two time frames here, right? I have the default time frame, and now we have the 30-second time frame here. So as I right click there, I'm going to go to the default time frame and just add a bar direction. Okay, I'm going to keep this really simple here. And then I'm going to go right click again, go back to solvers, and then go to the 30-second time frame and add a bar direction there. And there we go. And we can see solvers on any secondary time frame, right? It'll be labeled there on top of the solver. And so now let's just group them together with an AND node. Now if you're really paying attention here, you may have noticed that I have not changed the calculation mode yet. So I am still on bar close, or I should say Bloodhound is still on bar close, and we can tell right there, right? It says on bar close. So let's go and change this. But also, what this does is it also shows us all the bars that have closed, where the Renko, down bars here synchronize with any 30-second bar that had closed down as well. So any gaps here, like these Renko up bars, right? That means on these bars, when these bars closed, there was an up bar, a down bar. So probably, this gap here is probably this down bar right here. Right? Or it could be that doji there. Let's see. 10:05. No, it is this down bar here. Yeah. So actually, this is a dragonfly doji. So I believe, let's see, the mode, all or nothing. Nope, there we go. Signals for a doji. Yeah, so it is actually enabled there. A gravestone or a dragonfly. Yeah. So what that means is that this doji, actually, it may not be a doji. No, it's not. Actually, there's a couple of ticks there, so it's not truly a doji. So that is considered an up bar. All right. Or I'm sorry, that is considered a down bar. Sorry. Yeah. But in any case, right? So that is with on bar close. And so now let's go and adjust the calculation mode here for Bloodhound. And we're going to go to the calculate there and change it to on price change. And there we go. All right. Now, if we wanted to add some other things to this, like I'll add just a simple MACD filter here. So let's grab a threshold solver. We'll plug that in, and all right, we'll just check to see if the MACD is above or below the 0 line. So, all right, so for the input, we're going to plug in the MACD. There's our indicator list. All right, do a little search. There's our MACD. I'm just going to use default settings and use the MACD line. Click OK. There. And I'm going to now make a copy of that and paste it down here. And so for this secondary one here, I'm going to, you can either use the arrow buttons there, or you can just drag it down here. There we go. So I'm going to put this one on the 30-second time frame. And there we go. We can see the label up top there. There. Adjust the name. All right, so we're looking at the MACD on the Renko chart here. And there, I'll just mark the the short outputs there, and now let's take a look at the MACD on the 30-second chart. All right, so there we go. So we do have some differences for sure, right? So let's connect that in. Now we'll connect all this in like so. And here, close that out. There we go. Now we kind of have everything stripped down and filtered by a MACD. So we have a lot less to look at. Yeah, and there we go. Now, of course, be mindful that calculations for on-price change only occur on bars that build in real time. So all these historical bars are still historical. So those are only calculated by NinjaTrader as on-bar close. All right. So if so the short version is, if you have an indicator or a system that must run with on price change, then you do have to use NinjaTrader's tick replay option there. Yeah, you have to use Ninja's tick replay option here in order to have everything calculate as if it was on price change for historical data. So, all right. Well, this was Randy's question there. So pretty straightforward. Yeah. All right, so there we go. So this is Renko, all right, Renko bar closing in the same direction as another time frame. So all right, there. All right. Well, looks like Randy doesn't have any follow-up questions, so let's move on to the next question here. All right, let's put that away. And I'll put my secondary chart away. There, let's pull up the next question here. And actually, I myself kind of need to just read through this again here. But we do also have a chart that was included, which is always helpful. There. All right, yeah, so give me a moment here. I'm going to read through this question and absorb this question again here. All right, so I think the important two questions here, there's two key important questions here, which is to identify, right, when the histogram, a histogram bar drops by more than 2 points, right? So now, of course, this is all prefaced after we have the EMA crossover, right? And then to identify when the histogram drops or rises by 2 points, right? And then also identify a candle wick there. Identify a wick. So and a wick in the opposite direction of the crossover. Yeah, a wick. So since this is a screenshot of an EMA cross down, right? This is a cross down for a short signal there. And so as far as the wicks go, we want to identify an upper wick. So yeah, so just a moment here. I'm trying to interpret what this last sentence means here. So Melroy, what you haven't explained here is what exactly, let's see here. Yeah, so Bloodhound can identify these wicks for sure. So if this is identified, is this to prevent, to block the signal, or what? So this last part here makes it sound like, there's something specific which you haven't explained here. Let's see here. Oh, okay, there we go. So we have some comments in the Q&A window. Oh, okay. So here we go. So, all right. Here's really what's being asked, which, yeah, wasn't included in the email, which is, yeah, can the signal be generated only when the wick of this candle touches the EMA? So, yes. Yep. All right. So let's include that. Let's see here. Yeah, let's include that with the question. There we go. So this is really the key point of the whole question here. All right. So, well, all right. I think I have everything I need now. So let me get my chart set up here. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I had my microphone muted. Shoot. All right, now let me back up here. Sometimes, I swear, the button on my microphone's kind of finicky. All right. So, yeah, let me back up here. So the point I was making earlier here is that because of this condition here, right, what's wanted is to identify or produce the signal when the wick touches, right? When the wick touches the EMA there. So that means that Bloodhound, that means our indicator needs to run using on price change, right? Obviously, if you wait for the bar to close, right, then you're going to get in, who knows, much later possibly, right? So so again, this requires that you change the calculate setting of NinjaTrader here. So the Bloodhound has to run with calculate set to on price change, or possibly on each tick here. But we're not dealing with tick-based indicators, so we can run it using on price change there. All right. All right, and then also what I was discussing is we'll just set up each of these conditions here, right? So we have condition, the EMA crossover condition here labeled as 0.1, and then for, what is it, where 0.2 and 0.3, which is the MACD crossover there. Let's go back to the screenshot here. Yeah, so 0.2 and 3 are really the same thing. When the histogram crosses that zero line, right, and it synchronizes with the EMAs crossing over there. Yeah. So, and then the final condition will be one of the wicks touching the EMA there. All right, so now let's get back to building there. All right, so we have half of the crossover solver built here, right? So the EMA 9 crossing over the 14. So I have the EMA plugged into input A. So now input B, we'll plug in the EMA for that. Here's our EMA, and this time it's the 14 period, so we're good to go. There. All right, so that is the EMA crossover. Now we just need to identify the MACD crossover. So I'm just going to add another crossover here. There. All right, so input A, that will be our MACD histogram. There's our MACD, and I'm just going to use the default settings here. And we do need to go and select the histogram, which NinjaTrader calls it the difference, which technically that's what it is. So mathematically, yep, it's just the difference there between the MACD line and the average line. All right. Now, input B, right, we're wanting to identify when it the histogram crosses that zero line. So input B, we're going to change the input to a fixed value. In this case, the zero line, right? Zero being that fixed value. And there we go. So now we can see whenever that histogram crosses the zero line there, right? And let's take a quick look at the EMA. So I did kind of just move on here, right? So there's all of our EMA crossovers as well there. Right, cross up, cross down, cross up. Okay. Let's see what is next. Oh, so we also need the histogram needs to be longer than 2 points. Yeah, we need a histogram longer than 2 points there. So for that, we're going to use the threshold solver. All right, so let's give this a name here. All right, so we're looking for a 2 point threshold level minimum there. All right, so let's plug in our MACD. All right, there we go, and select the difference plot like so. Now we need to go in. All right, so essentially, all this threshold solver is identifying is the MACD above 0 or below 0. All right, so we need to go into the threshold rules and identify when the MACD is greater than 2. So we could include the equal symbol as well if you wanted to. Right, or less than -2, right? And as well, we could include the equals condition there. So now when we hit apply, there we go, right? Now we see we have some gaps in the output here, right? So this gap here, right, where there's no output from Bloodhound, that's because the histogram is less than 2 or greater than -2, right? So, all right, so there's that 2 point requirement there. Now, of course, you're probably not going to get this 2 point requirement with when the wick touches the EMA, right? So this 2 point requirement is probably only going to occur if the trade is successful, right? In other words, once price moves back down in the direction of the EMA crossover, and then your histogram is probably going to generate that 2 point movement there. So, all right. Let's see here. And let's see here. All right. I think, the only thing we need to do now is identify when a wick touches the EMA. And let's see here. Yeah, since we're waiting for a crossover to occur, then that means the EMA 9 is always going to be the closest EMA to price or to the bars, right? So we'll just identify when the wick touches the EMA 9 there. So yeah, it's not going to be necessary to identify when it touches the 14. So yeah, but if you wanted to, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there just so that everybody understands what's capable. We could, so right now we're going to require that, right, a wick touches the EMA 9, but you could also say, you know what, if the wick touches the EMA 14, then that nullifies the signal. But of course, the nullification always comes after the entry signal, but that is all possible there. So, but all right, so let's identify when price is touching that EMA 9. So that is going to be a comparison solver here. So let's grab a comparison solver. All right. So the example that we have here, the screenshot, right, is of a short signal, right? So in preparation for a short, when the high price, right, touches that EMA 9, right, we're looking at the high price to touch the EMA 9 there for a short, right? So the low price is used for a long signal, and the high price is used for a short signal there, all right? So input A, that'll be the bar prices. So let's put price in there. And now for a long signal, right, the low wick needs to touch the EMA 9, and if it's a short signal, the high wick needs to touch. Okay. Now input B, that will be our EMA 9. All right, so let's grab our EMA, put in the 9 period, like so. There. Now, in this particular, let's see here. Oh, yeah, I do need to. So we can see right now that all the bars that are touching the EMA 9, right, all the bars that are touching, there's actually no output here, right? So what we need to do is go into the comparison rules here and reverse these conditions here. So if we reverse them, like so, hit apply, there we go, right? And now we can see whenever a bar is touching the moving average, it produces a long and a short at the same time, right? Because the high price is above and the low price is below. So that's how you identify if a bar is touching a moving average, is you get a long and a short at the same time here. Now, but normally we don't need to reverse these symbols to identify if a bar touches. But in this case, I did, because we want the high price to be above, right? The high price touching the moving average means, right, it's above it. It's above the moving average. So essentially, these prices were reversed here. Normally, if you're just simply identifying when a bar touches a moving average, normally you would just put the high price in long and the short price, or the low price in short, and then these conditions are correct. But because we reverse these, for this system here, reverse the prices, we had to reverse the conditions there. So, and also, just in case, let's include the equals condition there. There. All right. Now, we're only interested in the bars that have a long and a short output at the same time. All right. So, to identify those long and shorts together, we're going to use the long short modifier. There. Like so. And the mode that we want is we're going to use the minimum mode. And there we go. Actually, there's several modes that'll do this. You could use minimum. You could use difference there. Oh, actually, no, apparently I stand corrected there. Not difference, but product. So definitely, yeah, product will do that, right? Because if 0 times 1 is always 0, right? And so you have to have 1 times 1 there to have an output there. But I think the easiest, I think the most intuitive mode here is just minimum there. All right. And there we go. So we have an output whenever a bar or the bar wick touches the moving average there. All right, now last step here is to combine everything together. So I'm going to leave this 2-point histogram requirement out for now. So let's connect that up there, and let's just identify. Let's just look for the basic condition here. Actually, I'm going to call it the pre-setup. There we go. There, we have one. Now, and so what usually happens here is, right, the MACD doesn't synchronize exactly with the other conditions there. All right, let's see here. Yeah, all right. So as I'm kind of reading this, it says the MACD after the crossover there. All right. Yeah, so as we can see here, the MACD did cross above the 0 line, or the histogram crossed above the 0 line first, and then we got the crossover. All right. So I'm going to disconnect the crossover there, right? Because using two crossover solvers, what happens is, right, the crossovers need to happen at the same time. And all right, so if we look at the MACD histogram, there we go. That the crossover happened on this bar, and it actually looks like there is no histogram, but it is barely above 0. But we can see the EMA is crossed over 2 bars later. Yeah. So let's just take that out. And let's plug this guy in here, like so. And there we go. There we have it. So I think, yeah, we're going to have a lot more signals now. So the histogram, the value is greater than 2 on all these. So now we're going to have a lot more signals to work with. There we go. Right there, right there, right there. Yep. All right. So, and yeah. So now, as a matter of, details here, this is why, thinking through the details is critical when you're emailing a question in, which is, is the signal only valid, at on the crossover bar, or do you want to possibly allow 1 bar afterwards? Like this was almost a good example here. So we can see, right, on the crossover bar of the EMAs, the wick didn't quite pull back enough, but the second bar could have, right? We did have a pullback on this second bar, but it didn't quite get down there as well. But the EMA 9 has moved up so much more on the second bar that it makes it easier for that wick to come down and touch it. So I'm not gonna factor that in. But if you did want to allow a secondary bar to also possibly generate a signal there, then what we need to do is to take our pre-setup here and extend it forward by an extra bar, right? So we can just use the signal extender to 1, like so. And let's see here. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to, all right. So we can see whenever something like this happens, you just have to reload the chart here. So right now we're not getting any signal extending going on. So let's just reload the chart there. And there we have it, right? So now we have an output on the setup bar or the pre-setup bar.
Volume spike.
And then also on the secondary bar there, all right? There, let me turn the volume down a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So, right, matter of semantics there. And then, so if you only want it to be the setup bar there, then we can just connect this in right there. And there we go. And we have it. So, but if you want to allow for 2 bars there, then we would need another AND node. Like so, and let's disconnect that and connect that in there. And just for the sake of trying to find an actual signal, I'm gonna leave this connected together like this for now. There, and let's see if we can actually find any signals. Hey, there we go. All right. Yeah, so we have the crossover there, right? Yep. Now, something else that you have to be mindful of is look how close those moving averages are. So there's a good chance that the EMAs did not cross over yet when the bar actually touched it. So yeah, just be mindful of that. So you do actually have to have a crossover. And as price pulls back, you may not have that crossover there. So yeah, that's a good example there. Yeah. All right, there's another, yeah, another one. So yeah, I think the same thing here, right? I think this, yeah, this crossover only occurred because price had dropped so dramatically that it pulled all the EMAs down. Because like the EMAs were way up here when price was way up here, and because of this long bar down, yeah, the EMAs didn't cross until price dropped all the way down there. Yeah. And yeah, here's another example of, yeah, the EMAs didn't cross until price had moved way up here. And right, because the EMAs were down here and they didn't get pulled up until this dramatic move there in the market. So yeah, this one's hard to call, hard to say. Yeah, this one's hard to say. But all right, I think this one right here, yeah, would have definitely had worked out there. So yeah, it's hard to tell if the crossover occurred on this bar. It may have. Let's see here. No, all right, the crossover did happen on this bar, but the bar opened there, so that probably did pull the EMAs up. Excuse me. And that separation, it's a pretty good separation. So I think there's a good chance that they may have still been crossed over even when the market pulled back to generate that wick. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to put this back to the way the question was written here, like so. There. Oh. Yeah. Let's take a look at this. Oh, yeah, this one's kind of questionable. Although the wick didn't. Oh, wait, actually. That wick's not even touching. Let's see here. All right, yep, let's do a reload. And Oh, no wonder. All right, there we go. So if you spot little things like this, right, you can see, we can see the wick actually isn't touching. Well, just inspect your indicators or solvers again here and inspect the indicators in those solvers, and there we go. I spotted the problem. There you go. It's an 8, not a 9. There. All right. Ever so subtle difference, and there we go. Fixed that signal there. There we go. Now it's gone. All right. There. All right. Yep. It looks like, my guess is, I think that signal would have worked out. So we had to open very close to the moving averages. And so as the market moved up, yeah, my guess is those EMAs would have still have been crossed over. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. Here. All right. So to summarize here, right, we have just three main conditions here, or three main components, right? So we have the EMA crossover up here. We have this MACD histogram, right, where the histogram needs to have moved, or the MACD histogram needs to be a value of 2 or greater, or a -2 or less, right? And so that's this threshold solver in the middle there. And then the last component is we need a wick to touch that EMA to actually fire off that signal there. So, all right. So with that, let me take a look at see if there's any follow-up questions here. Yeah. All right, just look like, yeah, there's some follow-up questions here. All right. All right, so Melroy, here we go. If you look at the Q&A window here, the next comment here is about the MACD crossover. Yeah, so if you would please be very specific as to which MACD line we're talking about. So when you're mentioning that for a MACD crossover to take place, not to be mistaken with crossing the zero line. So you're asking to make sure both lines have to cross the zero line, but then you're saying not to be mistaken with crossing the zero line. Yeah, so if you could rewrite that sentence and be explicit with which MACD line you're talking about. Yeah, this is, again, I can't emphasize enough that details matter. You can't just say MACD. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume the MACD line, unless there's something else that, that suggests, like for example, the histogram is specifically mentioned here, having a 2 points there. Yeah. Yeah, let's go to this screenshot here. I wonder if I can we zoom in? There we go. Yeah. So we can see here, right, that when the signal line crosses the MACD line, right, that is when the histogram crosses as well. Yeah, so I'm not sure, yeah, which MACD lines you're referring to in this comment here up at the top there. So, all right, so we'll circle back around to these MACD crossovers here that are being wanted. And let me, for now, I'm going to continue on with the other comments or questions. Let's see. All right, yeah, so we got the pullback here. Okay, so yeah, I guess we don't have, based on, yeah, your last statement there, Melroy, that, right, the MACD has 3 lines, yep, 2 lines and the histogram, which is the difference, right. Yeah, so Melroy, I think where your confusion lies here is that the crossover of the lines match exactly with the histogram, because the histogram is just the subtraction between the 2 lines here. So they always correlate exactly with each other. So let me just turn on the average line here. Like so. Yeah, so there we go. We have when the MACD line crosses the signal line, that's when the histogram also crosses the 0 line. So they're one and the same. So I don't, so trying to think of a good way to phrase this. So you should never duplicate a condition because you're just impacting your CPU. You're asking your CPU to do more unnecessary calculations when you duplicate conditions. So we could put the MACD line and the average line into a crossover solver and identify when these two lines cross each other, but that's exactly the same thing as identifying when the histogram crosses the zero line. They're both the same exact condition. So there's no need to duplicate those two conditions. Yeah, you're just duplicating the calculations that your CPU has to do, which eventually over time, if you do that too much, it begins to impact NinjaTrader because your CPU can't keep up. Yeah, so I don't ever duplicate that work there. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm just going to turn off the average line there. And really, actually, we don't even need, for this, we don't even need the MACD line. We could also turn that off as far as, what's being used here. But I guess it is kind of nice to see the MACD line when you're trading. So I think it's just kind of comforting to traders to know where that MACD line actually is, relative to the zero line and what has it done in the past, right? So I'll just leave it on there just in case. All right. I think we have taken care of everything here so far. And also, yeah, so let me just kind of also close this out with a few tips here. So I did leave, right, the signal extender and the AND node in here just in case. Having these two extra unused nodes really isn't going to impact anything because this system is very, very simple. But ultimately, if you don't want to allow a signal on the second bar afterwards, right after the setup. So if you know for sure that you're actually, let me see if I can find a better example here. Well, all right, I'm gonna just kind of go with this as my example here. It's not perfect, but let's say that this actually was, right, that was the setup bar there, that the EMAs actually crossed there, So if you're absolutely positive that you don't want to allow the second bar to generate a signal, right? If the signal has to be generated on the crossover bar for sure, yeah, then go ahead and delete those extra nodes, but I'll leave them in there for now, just in case, you change your mind. And you might want to play around and see if allowing the second bar after the crossover to generate signals okay or not. So, and also, knowing what we know, just gonna get rid of this histogram crossover. Yeah, because after scanning through the charts here, yeah, it looks like the MACD histogram is always crossing before the EMAs cross. So I think, we'll just go with the solver that we have here. And then, possibly if you adjust your EMA periods, right, make your EMAs a little faster, then you might, or not might, but if you make your EMAs faster, then you'll need to adjust this value, right? You'll need to reduce it, like maybe down to 1.5 or something like that, right? So, or if you make your EMAs slower, then you may want to increase this value to something like 3 or 4, something like that. Yeah. So, yeah. So that crossover, that MACD histogram crossover solver in here, I'll just leave it in here. Where is it? There it is. I'll leave it in here. But I don't think it's really going to be, actually, no. I take that back. So remember, this crossover solver only generates a signal on the histogram crossover. Yeah, so actually, this condition is never used and never would be used here. Yeah, so that means, so the only time you would ever use this MACD histogram crossover solver is only if the EMA crossovers synchronize like almost perfectly with the MACD crossover, and they never do. Yeah, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. Yeah, because I basically I read into this question a little incorrectly. So sometimes you do have to just start building stuff before you really fully understand, what solvers you need and exactly what conditions you're looking for. Yeah, so we should just get rid of this crossover here just to eliminate any confusion in the future. There. All right. Yeah. So this threshold solver, looking for some kind of minimum value here on the histogram is good enough, and you can just increase or reduce, that threshold value there, as necessary. So, again, to summarize, if you change the periods of your EMA and your crossovers occur closer to the MACD histogram crossovers, then you're going to want to reduce this value. And if you increase the EMA periods, so the crossovers occur later, then you'll want to increase this value. So there. All right, let's connect that up. Leave it like so. And yeah, there we have it. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Well, all right, doesn't look like there's any other questions here. So I will, so let me just provide another tip here. All right. So when you have, a system built here in the workshops, and this probably, well, no, I guess this applies to any kind of Bloodhound file, right, that you might ask for, that, because as you guys should know by now, you can always email support and ask Mike for a copy of today's Bloodhound file. And so when you're trying to extract your system, right, your question, your system out, just remember you can always just highlight everything like so, copy it, and then There we go. We can go to another chart. And let's put Bloodhound on this other chart, like so. There we go. There, open it up a little bit. So now we can hit the Bloodhound button on top of the chart here. And then I can paste my system on here. And when I do that, look at the solvers list. I'm only left with the solvers that matter for your particular question there, right? So all these other solvers were stripped out, and even that other time frame, that secondary time frame from today's first question, that was also stripped out. So you're just left with what's necessary. And you can see this is a little faster than trying to clean up this Bloodhound, the workshop file. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go and delete this logic template and delete the solvers and delete the time frame and all that, right? A little bit of extra work. I mean, the result will be the same, but just copying your system out, dropping it into a brand new blank Bloodhound there is just a little quicker, a little easier, right? And you're guaranteed to just be left with the solvers that matter to your system, and you won't have any extra solvers, lying around there. So just a little extra tip there. So, all right. And close that and get rid of that. Nope. Well, let's see what time it is. All right. Well, we're at the 1.5 hour mark. Boy, I didn't think both of those questions would take so long. So, all right. Well, since we're at the 1.5 hour mark, I'm going to start the timer here, gentlemen. And so if I don't see any more questions come in the next 5 minutes or so, then I will just assume we are done for the day and wrap it up. But if you guys have any more questions, please let me know and I'll get them answered. And let's see, let me see who's in the room. I don't see anybody new joining us late. So, well, there's Vito. All right, welcome, Vito. Yeah, and also just as you guys, to repeat myself again, you can get a copy of today's Bloodhound file here. Just email support there and ask Mike for a copy of today's Bloodhound file, and he'll get that to you as soon as everything's uploaded there. And also let me save out the chart template. And not sure what happened there. All right. Oh, that's what happened. All right, let me remove that. Here. There. Oh, hi, Vito. Doing good. So, I think everybody enjoys springtime. I know I'm enjoying springtime. Yeah, we just all the ornamental city trees. Yeah, they all just kind of finished their blooms, and so that was very beautiful to see. Yeah, a little sad. Yeah, most of the trees have lost their blossoms, but there's still a few trees hanging in there, keeping their blossoms for a little bit longer. So, but the weather is great, right? Love this time of year where you don't have to run the heater, you don't have to run the air conditioner, you can open the windows, let some fresh air in. Yeah, yeah, nice time of year. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, guys, couple more minutes to think of some more questions and get them in here. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Um, yeah, very true. Hopefully you're, yeah, Vito's saying it's stuck in front of a screen, right? Well, hopefully there's a window very, very close by. So, yeah, I have been very fortunate in that, out of all the places, actually, no, there was one company that, there was one company that I wasn't close to a window. But other than that, yeah, one company I worked at, I've always somehow managed to get my desk right next to a nice big window. So I always had sunlight coming into the office. Yeah, very nice. Very blessed indeed. So, yeah. Yeah, so if possible, if your desk isn't by a window, see if you can shift, shift things around in the house. So you're close to a window. But then the, next issue to address is to make sure the sunlight isn't on your monitors. So, yeah, for me, when the morning sun comes in, I do have to put the shades down because the morning sun just covers my monitors with sunlight, and of course you can't see anything when that happens. So, yeah, but as soon as noontime comes around, the sun's high, the shades go back up. So, all right, gentlemen. Well, it's been 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes here, and we're losing people in the room. So I suspect we are done for the day with all the questions. So all right, I'm gonna wrap it up here. And just a reminder, if you have Blackbird questions, feel free to email those Blackbird questions in, and I'll get them answered tomorrow. Or otherwise, maybe I'll see you in the Blackbird workshop tomorrow. All right, guys, take care. Have a good rest of your day or night, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye-bye, folks.